Everything is a tool. You can turn any emotion into something positive and be aware of what it is that's bothering you.
You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, No Labels, No Limits podcast listeners. This is Sarah Box, your host, and I want to formally welcome you back to another episode of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, where we explore the journey of individuals who push the boundaries of what's possible, found different ways to do things, and then come back and share with us their experiences, their wins, their losses, so that we can all break through limiting labels and beliefs and move forward in our own lives. And today we are joined by Jose Berlanga, and he's got a really diverse background. Let me just shorten it up to say he is a seasoned entrepreneur, developer, builder, and author, and he has nearly 4 decades in business. So he brings a lot of wisdom and experience to this conversation. You know, he's gone from building homes to writing about them, and his journey is really nothing short of inspiring. He has knowledge and experience across multiple industries, but what's important is it challenges our conventional understanding of success and resilience. So with that short introduction, let me welcome Jose to the podcast. Hi, Jose.
Hello, Sarah. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for that nice introduction.
Let me ask you this. What is the one thing that you want people to know about you? 2, if you want, that before we dive into this conversation that you think would provide context to what you share?
That's a wonderful question because I always find one thing too. I want to be known as a great dad, a good family guy, which is a full-time job in itself. But I do want to be known as one of the toughest guys when it comes into the world of adversity. I have been known to be the guy that keeps getting back up, no matter how many times I get punched, knocked down. I don't pride myself in being the most successful or the wealthiest or the smartest or the most creative or the most intense negotiator. I'm just predominantly known for someone who just keeps coming back, no matter what the setback is, no matter how bad life hits me and how many times. I just keep trying. I don't give up. I think that's my virtue. I may be known as other things, but that's what I would like to be remembered for.
That reminds me of when I was a kid. I'm not presuming that we're anywhere in the same ages, but we might not be that far off. There was that toy, right, that stood up. It was like a balloon, but you knocked it over, and it just the way it was balanced, it kept coming back up. Back up. And the goal was to see if you could knock it over to make it and it never stayed down. It just kept coming back up. So
yeah. And believe me, I want to stay down many times because life's job is to push you around and to make it real fun and real exciting. And I think that's just part of it. Some people have a smoother ride than others, but I certainly have not had one.
So what is, well, let's go back a little bit. You talked about starting your home building industry unexpectedly. Can you say what you mean by that?
Well, the most unexpected part about me being a builder developer is the number of years that I have been involved with. That is the most even shocking and concerning to me because I don't like operating businesses. I do not enjoy being behind a desk. I'm ADD. I'm very distracted, as I was telling you earlier. I have dyslexia. I have anxiety. I want to be in 5 different places at the same time. And it's extremely difficult for me to sit in an office. But ironically, that's what I have been doing for decades. Because I end up somehow being the guy who fixes problems and who little by little starts just operating. So I got into this business supposedly as a temporary thing. to invest money in the business, to get it started, to start building it, to set up systems, procedures, bring in some capital, and little by little pass on those responsibilities to other people to manage, because that really is my area of not only expertise, but the area that I enjoy is setting things up, putting them together, not remaining in the long term as the operator. So that's the shocking part, is that as I got into home building and to real estate, I learned the complexity of this particular business, not just this one, but many others that represent a tedious, endless number of duties and growing pains. So the longer I got in it, the more I realized that it required my time and my participation. And it became an ongoing project that in my mind would take a year or two the most, turn into close to 30 years now. And I'm still in this business. Although I've been in many others before, during, and after, I never stopped dabbling in startups and in other industries that I enjoy. I enjoy the entrepreneurship part, but the construction business, I somehow ended up here for the long term.
What do you suppose that is? I mean, what kept bringing you back to that? Because you could have gone off, I mean, being a serial entrepreneur, and then you mentioned ADHD, I'm sure there are many shiny things that you could have gone after. So something kept bringing you back to construction.
Yes, several things kept bringing me back to this business. One of them was the inability to leave in the first place, because the real estate is very capital intensive. There are two ingredients that are very, very important in the residential construction or in construction in general. One is that it requires a lot of capital. Two is that the cycles are very long. So it's not like opening a shop and the next day you have traffic and the next day the cash register starts ringing. In real estate, it might be a couple of years by the time you buy something, you tie up, negotiate it, close it, develop it, market it, and all of everything in between is very long. So by the time you're done, you might overlap developments and you might start another one during those couple of years of developing one thing. Before you know it, you have multiple developments and a web of investments that are very, very difficult to unwind. The other side of it is that the moment you get a taste of profit, which is not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, you start telling your mind, this thing works, I can make money at it. And even if you don't make money on every single transaction, your mind starts telling you that it's possible. So you keep trying. And in this business, you're either making a lot of money or losing a lot of money. When you're making a lot of money, you don't want to walk away from it. When you're losing money, you are in so much trouble everywhere that there's no simple way to walk away from it. You're very involved in fixing problems. So anyway, it just dragged me in like one of those waves when you're a surfer and that wave just swallows you and you're trying to get out but you're stuck. That's how I
undertow.
Yes.
Pulls you back out. No, I can appreciate that. I know we're very close to some design builders here and architects, and that's exactly it. It's like they've got projects going, but then things outside your control impact that, right? You can have like all of a sudden supply stop or labor stop. I mean, all kinds of things affect your ability to move forward anyway, plus your resource or capital intensiveness.
Yeah, I am yet to have a simple year in this industry. Even the very successful years were very complex, where a sequence of setbacks and complications, because when years are good, when the economy is good, when the industry is attractive, everyone wants to get in it from everywhere. The competition becomes massive. Everybody's fighting over the same properties, negotiating and trying to go after the same lots that you're trying to go after, and it becomes saturated. And when years are not doing very well, then you're dealing with trying to sell your product and trying to figure out it's either financing, is either the supply chain, the marketing aspects, or the acquisitions. There's always something going wrong. It's a lot of moving parts.
And it's a lot. It sounds like it's a long game.
Yes. Particularly if you want to be successful at it, it's not something that you can just dabble in and do a little bit here and there. That's what can differentiate you, is the level of work ethic and the amount of effort and time that you put into it, because it's hard to differentiate the product. There the homes and land developments and even commercial developments. There's not that much to reinvent. It's just how efficient, how tough, how much work you put into it. That's really what makes it or breaks it.
And I think for a number of us on the consumer side, what also helps is trusting, like you said, the longevity, what's your reputation? Because as the ups and downs happen, like you said, I can watch around here in the development. We have high development around here. And you see a bunch of new names. I'm thinking, let's see if you're here when the economy starts tanking again, right? And they go. So you go back to the tried and true who know and hang in there and have done good work over that time.
Absolutely. Companies come and go, hundreds and thousands a year of companies come and go. They bring in some money. They lose it in most cases. They realize that it's not as easy as they thought. This is an underappreciated industry. Everybody thinks that they can do it. And what I tell them is, yes, anybody can build homes. Anybody can build buildings if you have unlimited time and unlimited resources. But when time constraints and budgets come in, and there are those limitations, and you actually want to make a profit, that's what differentiates the good ones from the bad ones. And making money consistent, being a sustainable company that continues to do and perform successful business transactions, that's what very tough. I mean, you can get lucky if you happen to be in a good cycle and make a little money, but doing it year in and year out becomes very, very, I would say more than difficult, very challenging.
So I'm thinking back into different industries, and especially the nonprofits that I work with, that people they'll start them. Oftentimes they fail within 3 years because it's not as easy as it might have been on startup. But the ones who've been there longer, and the joke is, oh yeah, they're an overnight success after 10 or 12 years, right? They're solid, they've got sustainability, they've gotten rid of stuff that they thought they had to do, and now they're doing really what they're ace at. Is there a similar cycle for you? Like you'd look and say, okay, this new business comes in, maybe into your industry, let's say, and if they're still there and hanging out after X number of years, they're likely to make it. Do you have a benchmark like that, Jose?
In my opinion, the benchmark for a successful business in our industry, in any sector of construction, has to do with the amount of experience and the amount of capital you bring with you. So that is a very, very important part of this business. You can have very little experience, but very deep pockets. That might propel you and keep you longer, and even allow you the time necessary for that learning curve, and eventually you can start being good at it. Or you can, let's say, have worked for another company, have learned on somebody else's nickel, and have been in the industry before, and eventually you go on your own. There's still going to be a lot of aspects to be learned, because it's not the same working for a company than being the one responsible for every detail and every aspect in every department. You might have been in the construction side, but now you have to learn about finances and numbers and dealing with banks and dealing with legalities, or not dealing with purchasing and so on and so forth, and design and the city. And there's a lot of moving pieces. Or you may have done that part, but you haven't. So you need that time, even when you have experience. So that's just to learn the business, but to actually be successful, you are right. I don't think that any business can go through an important growth level in less than 10 years. And this goes for most industries. You can achieve a good level of growth and a decent level of success, I would say, where you can position yourself as a leader after that period of time. I don't know how anything can happen in less than that. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs and young people get too eager. They want to overnight success, and that doesn't really exist.
Well, we're promised that it does, though, right?
Yes, yes.
So you go from zero to this, whatever this number is, and now you're an overnight success. And even if you hit that financial number, you may have done it at the cost of actually crippling your business or your business relationships or other things.
We want immediate gratification in the world of business and consumers and every aspect. But the more you defer spending money, expecting results, the more time you give anything, the bigger the reward, I think, at the end of the tunnel, on the other side of the equation, the reward will be greater the longer you wait.
So can you talk a little bit more about deferring gratification, just, that way? Because I think that's an important part. People can be really disheartened when they're putting in all this effort and not seeing the results that they wanted or expected or hoped to see.
Yes, expecting results is something natural. We learn that even when we're in school. We make progress every year. We move from first grade to second grade, and if you study, you are assured those results. You study, you pass your test, you move on. In business, first of all, nothing is assured. You can work very, very hard. You can do everything right, and some outside components may hit you, an economy, currencies, political issues, you name it. There are things that even if you did things right, there's nothing guaranteed in the business world. And this is something that not every young entrepreneur really understands. And by deferring really your success, I mean that a lot of us begin to finally start making some money, and we want to enjoy it too soon. We don't want to reinvest in our businesses without understanding that most businesses are cyclical. They have ups and downs, they have growing pains, and that they will require financial discipline. When you begin to make money, most of us want to start living life, want to start buying things, want to start traveling and enjoying and in showing the world that we are successful, instead of deferring it and saying, no, I'm making money, but I may need that money for my business. There might be a rainy day. Or maybe I'm going to reinvest it in better infrastructure, in a better team, in a better way of doing things that cost money, software, so on and so forth, and forgetting myself for a little bit. I think that that's one of the most difficult things in entrepreneurship. It's not just to start, but remain in business by restraining yourself from mismanaging your money the moment you get your hands on it. How many people can just have some savings or financial freedom and not enjoy it? I mean, it takes a real particular personality to say, no, I'm not going to touch this. I'm just going to put it back in the business. Because the other sad part is that still doesn't assure you know that I've gone through periods of time where I reinvested in my business, the earnings, the profits, and eventually something went wrong and I did not enjoy the money. And then I ended up losing it because the business had some hiccups and some speed bumps. So that's just part of the game. Just sort of like the big bettors in Las Vegas, where they're up and they have a big mountain of chips, and instead of walking away, they just keep gambling them and playing them, and before you know it, they're gone. So in business, it's kind of difficult to time things and know when it's time to slow things down and when it's time to continue to grow.
So someone who doesn't have your decades of experience, say they're starting out, whether it's in your industry or another, and they are good at what they do, right? So they are an expert in their piece of the business, but they may not have the other aspects of it, like you pointed out, financial or whatever. How do you help folks think differently about that so that they don't find themselves at that metaphorical gambling table in Vegas, right? And they started getting some chips and they're going through them. How do you suggest entrepreneurs, business leaders who are new kind of help themselves for success?
Preparing for the unpredictable begins with a humble personality to recognize that we don't know everything. A lot of entrepreneurs assume that because they understand one sector of the business is enough to run and operate and make money, and it's not. I learned that at a very young age, that knowing bits and pieces of a business is not enough for me to be successful. So acknowledging it is my first piece of advice. Understand that being a good, well-rounded businessman or woman needs a lot of experience, time, and that we continue to learn every day, that we're not going to know everything from day one. So remove that arrogance in your earlier years. Second, partner. Once you recognize those deficiencies, find people who complement and supplement those areas that you're not very good at. And recognizing those is very important for an entrepreneur. Just knowing. Part of what I write in my book is in the business of home building, which I had a lot of fun writing, but I talk about a lot of very fundamental things about the business world, but that we forget to think about. The planning, the different aspects that a business requires, as simple as it may be, we may be so focused on one area that we like and that we better understand than others and ignore the other ones. So you have to understand every aspect of a well-functioning machine in a business. And that's kind of what I recommend. Just be familiar with what you're doing before you take on too much risk.
That's really good advice. You also talk about the pros and cons that you've learned of being a very hands-on person and a hands-off person. And I know this is something that when I'm talking with clients and leaders about, it's like sometimes people say, I just don't want to have to tell people what to do, or I'm frustrated by it, but I also don't want to micromanage. And it's just that tension. And it makes me wonder if either the topic or the thing that's frustrating isn't really clearly defined for them, and it's not a matter of telling people, it's something else. Will you share some of your experience about being hands-on and hands-off?
Absolutely. One of the things that I pride myself in is recognizing my weaknesses. I am very honest with myself in understanding what are some of the things that I have not been very successful at. And one of those has been delegating. I've had an issue. I was brought up as a very hard, all work and very little brain, a lot of effort, a lot of participation, having my hands on everything. That's the way I was educated. I come from that old school where business requires sacrifice and pain, and you better pay attention everywhere because somebody's doing something that might jeopardize or cost you the entire business. So it was a very, very difficult process for me to pass on different responsibilities. Whenever I achieved any level of success, I had that fear of letting go and putting areas in the hands of someone else and losing my business. I kept thinking, well, to them, it's just a job. They'll go and find another job. To me, it's my whole life. So I created perhaps the wrong structures in some of my businesses where everything required me to participate in order for things to function well, sort of like being the sun with the planets around you, with everybody coming to you for decisions and questions and so on and so forth. Instead of creating management layers, which the people who do understand how to delegate, and we'll talk a little bit about that, those are experts in creating how to distribute those responsibilities accordingly, by selecting the right people, by knowing who needs to do what part of the business and allocating those very precisely, no gray areas as to who's doing what. And that's a talent. So we won't have time to discuss all the details that being a good delegator entails, but you need to learn them and understand what it is, because otherwise you can't grow. It's very, very difficult. Businesses get to a point where it doesn't matter how many hours the founder or the principal, the owner works, they become irrelevant. You can only do so much as one person. Once you have an army of people, now it's less about the amount of time and the quality of decisions, the mission and the vision and the direction that you give your team in order for the company to start going in a place where you want to see it. So I've been a very, very hands-on. That's been the drawback, is that I've had more troublesome growing pains than a lot of people that plan it from day one and start positioning those key members of your organization. I tend to do it a little late. So that's been painful for me. And I recommend that you find that right time, that the moment you see certain activities that become overwhelming, don't wait too long and start finding the right person to pass it on. And monitor them, but don't make decisions for them. You're going to have to let go, sort of like when your children become teenagers and then eventually go off to college, you have to trust them. So that's part of it.
It is. And it is it's a learning experience when you're used to doing it and being super hands-on. But it's also, I will say, a lifesaver for people, because you are only one person and you will exhaust yourself, and it's kind of fun when someone else is better than you are at something.
Yeah.
It's so great. You're going, okay, I need someone who's really good. I understand it. I could do it. I can't do it as well as they can do it. They can do it faster. They've got more ideas. And I don't have to do that.
And part of being a successful leader and entrepreneur is recognizing that most of the people that you surround yourself with are smarter and better than you at something. Surprisingly enough, to all the entrepreneurs out there, you don't need to be an expert at anything to be successful. You just have to find the right team and know how to assemble it. You need to understand what are the pieces and the ingredients that are required in order for my industry to succeed, and put those together. You don't need to do them yourself. You just need the ingredients. So I found that over the years that I didn't have to be an expert at anything and still make progress in the business world.
I had a boss when I was in my early 20s, 21, 22, industry I wasn't familiar with, but I could do what I was asked to do when I got hired. But he kept throwing more at me. And I says, why are you doing that? And he says, okay, I want you to know, I am not the smartest person here, but I need people smarter than me in these positions. I know how to work this team. He was brilliant, but he pushed me to step and to think differently about collaboration, working with people. Number one, it boosted my confidence to take stuff on that I didn't think I could or should do. But also just his way of saying, I am not the smartest one here. I am really good with people. I know who's good on this big team, and I want them to succeed. And that really was his motivation. And as a result, he succeeded. And it was inspirational to me, because it was the first time I met someone who just thought it isn't he said, and true, Sarah, it's selfish. If I want to go on and go into other areas of my life, I need this to be super successful without.
Yeah, I agree. And there are leaders that are very inspirational, that know how to motivate, because ultimately that is part of the growing motions of a business, knowing how to understand the important members of your organization, because everybody's different within your business. Not everybody's motivated by the same things. And the more you get familiar with your team and more personal with them and know what drives them, the more they will contribute to your mission. There are some businesses that are more owner intensive, I have to say, because I've been in different industries where the more cookie cutter your product is, the more repetitive the motions of your daily tasks are, the more you can grow and the more you can delegate. The franchise concept. There are others that you and I were talking about, the difference between a practice and in a business. When you operate a practice, you're more the musician, the doctor, the dentist, the architect, the person that needs to execute the actual work. And without you, that business doesn't really do a whole lot. Yes, you can surround with people that can assist you and improve the service and the product and the experience, but ultimately the business needs you there. That's a practice. In an actual business that can grow exponentially, you can be anywhere else. You can be absent, and the business continues to operate just as well. And you also have to know the difference in the business model before you embark on this journey and be aware of them. Otherwise, you'll be disappointed when you're trying to take a vacation and you can't because you chose the wrong model or because you didn't understand the type of business you were getting in.
So what's your experience with people who say they've started a practice and then they're going, I want to change my model? Do you have examples of where that has worked successfully for someone?
Yes, I have seen businesses that had an original intention and they started pivoting the model and adjusting the model. Some, and I'm going to go back and try to describe success. They can be financially successful, but the owner is unhappy, or vice versa. They can be, very, very happy operators, but the business is not making money. Those are two examples. Let's say that a doctor or an attorney gets into the business because they want to operate their activity and they're good at it, but they start growing, and before you know it, they start hiring more attorneys or more doctors to help them with their patients. Before you know it, the leader, the founder, ends up doing everything but dealing with patients or dealing with clients. Now you're dealing with payroll, now you're dealing with accounting, now you're dealing with issues with human resources, training, and before you know it, you're doing everything but whatever it is that brought you to that business in the first place. In vice versa, sometimes in my case, has been the opposite, where I wanted to pass on activities and responsibilities to others, but I got stuck. Somehow I built a web of activities that made it very, very difficult for me to detach myself from them. And you need that talent. And again, my solution is understand from day one, what do you want of your business? What is your vision? And clearly understand what that particular business model will require. Do you want to be the operator? You want to be the center of the business? Or you have no intentions, you just want to build an infrastructure. So those, they can both be successful. But again, the success is all in the eyes of the beholder. It's whatever makes you happy in the business. Some people want to be there every day, and some not. Some, like myself, I don't enjoy working long hours, but I end up doing it anyway if I have to.
So let's stay with your example of the lawyer, right? Who loves the practice, and they built a practice and they've brought on these other lawyers. Now they find themselves as the administrator, let's say. Can they pivot so that they can get back to doing what they love within that business, or do they need to start? I'm actually really want to know, like, is there a way to right the ship for them?
Yes, I believe that there is always a way to correct the direction of your business by becoming aware of that problem, not going into that famous insanity where you continue to do things over and over. The moment that you recognize that you're no longer enjoying your business is the day you begin to change things. To me, that has been the turning point. When one day I wake up and I don't want to go to work, that's the first time. So that my recommendation to entrepreneurs, the moment you dread getting up and getting ready and going to your office and going to work or doing whatever it is that you're doing, that is the moment that either you need to start thinking about what do you want out of your life, or you need to start shifting and rethinking the business model. And to answer the question, how do you do that? By recognizing the areas of your activities that you dislike, that you're just not happy doing, and make a true decision, determination to find someone to train. And as I always say, it might get a little worse before it gets better, because now you got to do your job and train someone else and find someone. And maybe the first person you find might not be the right candidate. So you have to let them go and start all over. So it might get worse before it gets better. Put up with that process, but eventually end it off. And because at the same time, life is too short. You don't want to spend your life making money, but disliking your activities and hating every day. So it's possible.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity on that, because I think it's important for folks to know wherever you are on your journey professionally, that you're not stuck there. You get to make choices. And like you said, find out where you are, what's really going on, and what do you really want. And it can be that simple of like, I hate going to work. I don't want to go to my own business. I created this business. I don't want to go there, because that's the sign to say, okay, let's start digging into this, because it's not going to change unless we decide to do something different. It's just going to stay as is.
What is your life worth? What is your time worth? What are your whatever number of years in your family, your inner peace? You need to start valuing those to a certain level where money might become second in the big scheme of things. I have walked away from a business, from a profitable business with great opportunities, because I was miserable. I just did not want to continue doing that. And I made those questions to myself. Do I see myself in a few years doing this? I'd rather cut back, adjust some of my expenses and figure it out and start something else that, God forbid, might eventually start making money, but I'm not going to regret it. I don't want to regret my life. Look at your life. The way I look at it is project yourself 10, 20, 30 years from now, and then look back and make that decision. Am I proud and happy of what I did? Did I enjoy the ride? And if the answer is no, then start making some changes and convince yourself that it's not all about money. It's more about the process of living your life. Easier said than done when you have financial obligations, but it's something that you better give it some real thought.
And the one thing I think that has helped me and other people I know is, once you reach that point, you don't have to do it on the next day. You just make a decision and you say, okay, if it's a financial issue, I'm going to start socking away money so that I've got a cushion. But that act of acting on your own behalf, like of saving so that you could be without that income you're used to for a few months or longer, it starts to compel you and encourage you to keep going. And I recognize not everybody's in a position to just walk away from a job. So that's why I hesitate to say to people, oh yeah, just change it up right today, because it might not be feasible. But there are baby steps to take.
Absolutely. I agree with you. It's not an overnight. It's not practical to walk away from your business or from your job. I understand it. We all have responsibilities and obligations. But once you recognize it, you're very right. You need to begin the process of phasing out of it. Yeah. What I do, and this is not something that everybody's willing to do, the times when I've been involved in an activity or a business that I dislike, that makes me miserable, I begin to invest every spare moment and minute planting something else. So that by the time I stop that activity, I have something else that maybe it's not successful yet, maybe it's not profitable yet, but it's already kind of on its way to becoming something. I did that since I was in college. That's why a lot of opportunities kept coming, because even if I was operating a business, whether it was doing well or not, I always spend my spare time looking at other opportunities and considering and researching other things that might be more fun or more exciting for me to make a living. So it always leaves that door open for you to move and pivot from your current life. But if you just procrastinate and sit around hate your life and do nothing about it, then shame on you.
Well, and the rock that you're carrying on your shoulder just gets bigger and bigger because you wait longer and longer. I remember when I went back to get my master's, I was like in my mid 40s, and I was asked, well, why would you do that now? I says, I got the time. And it's like, why not? Because I learned stuff. I wanted to get that done. And I'd been getting myself through college ever since I got out of high school. But it was just one of those things. I just wanted to go, and I learned things. And a professor there said, I think you might want to check this out, which I'd never thought of before. And it ended up, it changed things for me. So, but what you're saying is also you're always curious about other opportunities. And that's a mindset.
Absolutely. You have to have that ambition, that curiosity, that desire to move forward. I do believe that we underestimate the value of spare time. How much little time here and there we waste doing unnecessary things in the morning, at night, in the evenings, on weekends. I've owe this to my father. My father was an extremely busy, efficient, hardworking. Whether he was successful or not, the guy was always busy doing something, cleaning, picking up, trying to come up with a new or better way of doing things. He didn't have perhaps the vision of entrepreneurship, and he had other issues that also prevented him from moving forward, like all of us. But he was always busy, and I took that side, that part of him, and utilized it where I'm always thinking of plan B, and I'm always creating and preparing for plan B. So if you ever need to jump off the airplane, you're prepared for it. So you should always be planning for it and utilizing every waking moment that you have, and don't waste your time. And
I would add to that, if you would agree with this, but you're not doing it out of a sense of fear, just out of a sense of opportunity.
Correct. It doesn't have to be. You can use, now I'll say that you can use any motivator that works for you. I'm not against using fear as a motivating factor to move forward. You can use inspiration, you can use ambition, or simply a hobby that can eventually turn into something. Everything is a tool. You can turn any emotion into something positive and be aware of what it is that's bothering you. A lot of people tell me that, hey, I stress too much, I worry too much, I'm always busy thinking of what to do next. In my defense, I say, well, it is that little anxiety. It's worrying that has allowed me to do something with my life. If I wasn't worried, I'd be sitting around chilling, thinking that everything's going to go perfect. And I probably wouldn't have achieved much had I always thought everything was perfect. So I did a combination, I have to admit, a little bit of fear and uncertainty and a little bit of desire. So you can make your own salad of emotions to propel yourself to do something with your life.
I like that image of an emotional salad.
Yeah.
Hey, Jose, I want to switch gears on you for a minute. You good with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you indicated on our little survey that we asked for our guests that you are reading, or maybe you finished it by now, Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Have you finished it?
Yeah, I've actually, I had read it before, and then I started reading bits and pieces because it just has a very open way of looking at the world. Someone who is trying to discover the universe, and I kind of relate a lot. I have so many questions about the world and the universe, which I clearly understand that I will never have the answers to. But I like to find this way of relating to someone who thinks that they have things figured out by divine inspiration. So I always continue to try to search, even though I know that life is supposed to be complicated and we're not supposed to have all the answers, but that was inspirational. I have to admit, I don't read that much because I'm always busy, because I'm ADD, and rather I've started so many books that I never finished. And I don't know if many of your listeners can relate to this, but I'm the kind of person that will read the same page 3 or 4 times because I space out. And one page, I read the sentence and I go, oh my God, I get that. And let me run. Before you know it, half an hour later, I'm still on the same page. I suffer from that. So it's painful. It's painful because I have to be in a very relaxed state of mind for me to actually read a book. It's a struggle for me. So I read articles. I've become more of if something attracts me, I know a lot of bits and pieces of information, but I have to admit, I find it hard to just go through a book because my brain starts spacing out everywhere.
Have you ever heard of the app called Blinkist? Blinkist?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so check it out. It has on there, so it's a subscription base, but you can put in a title of a book, right? So say, and they tend to not be novels, they tend to be other than that. But say you wanted to read something by Malcolm Gladwell. So it'll be a synopsis. You can either listen to it or read it, but it's very fast and it goes through all of the key points and the details within it. So you get an understanding of the concept. And I've used that for a long time, but then I also go, okay, that book is worth more than this overview. I need the book, right? And like you, I can read a page, but then all of a sudden I'm thinking about something else. So I started listening because it's within my ears, right? So I can be looking at other things and distracted, but I can still listen and absorb and go back. But I feel you when it comes to sitting and reading. And I used to be able to read for hours, and now it's like, okay, I can listen for hours.
It's horrible. It's a curse and a blessing because when I read, I get so much information out of one page. That's the good thing about ADD. As I said, there's I like this new phrase that I heard: a mental diversity. Okay, we're not ADD. I learned that you can be a distracted person, which means that you are attention surplus. The few times that you apply your attention, you apply it very powerfully, very strongly, and you learn more things out of very little information. So sometimes I'll read a paragraph and I'll extract so much out of it that it will make my mind explode with different scenarios and understanding what a writer meant to say. And that's enough. I can just read a page of something and take enough information with me to not to take a break, enough to take a break.
Well, and if you do a little bit of that, that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got one last question, and then I'm going to ask you to leave us with a final thing. But as you look ahead into 2025 or the end of this year, what projects or initiatives are you feeling passionate about? Like, are you excited about for you, for your son, for your family?
I am very motivated and inspired about my future. I'm an optimist. I'm not young anymore, but I feel like every year I reinvent myself, or every few years I reinvent myself. And I try to do what we were talking about before, which is to remove myself from some of the things that I don't enjoy. I'm very motivated right now by a new activity in a stage of my life, which is to write. I'm on my 3rd book. I've already published the first one. I'm about to publish my 2nd book by the name of Dirt Rich, which is about land development, land investing, land speculating. Very, very, very fun. Talks about all the aspects of not only financial, but cultural, and so on and so forth. And I'm writing a 3rd book about entrepreneurship, but this is very exciting for me. It's fun. I always wanted to do something like this. I love getting invited to talk to people, to talk to entrepreneurs, to talk to sales teams and inspire and motivate others. That is something that I've been wanting to do. And again, I began doing it without even having enough time. But I said, no, I'm not going to wait any longer. We all have this problem as humans, or many of us, the tomorrow syndrome, the I will get to it one day. And I kept saying that one day I'm going to write a book. One day I'm going to start doing some public speaking, and I'm going to do some conferences, and I'm going to do more mentoring. And I kept saying that for a couple of decades. Didn't get around to it until one day I said, and I'm going to sit down and start writing and get on with this phase of my life. So that has me very, very motivated. And the world in general, I think that a lot of young people think that the world is a horrible place and that the planet is falling apart because they haven't lived in previous generations where things were much worse in so many other aspects. And the way that we live life today, it's incredible. The amenities, the services, the technology, the conveniences that we live in, most young people do not understand them or appreciate them. So, yes, there's some problems in the planet that we live in, but I think that invention and innovation will help us get there. And I'm excited about seeing all of those problems be addressed by the smartest people on the planet, much smarter than I am, that will come up with those solutions.
But we can hold this space of optimism. I feel like you do too. And especially if, like when I read historical books, I'm thinking, man, you had to be tough to live through that, really tough. And then I think about how easy, relatively easy, even the hard stuff, relatively easy has been for my generation, your generation, because, you know, of the other things that have gone before. So I am optimistic. And I'm becoming a little bit of a history nerd just because it helps keep the ship like, okay, let's keep ourselves oriented in space and time to know where we've come from, so we're not freaked out and can keep going forward.
Yes. It's an amazing future. We all make the mistake, including myself, of complaining too much, the traffic, the pollution, and too much of this and too little of that. And we tend to start, and I'm working too much and I'm not resting enough, without really understanding that, like you said, if you look at history, the world was a much tougher place to be in than we are now. There were famine, hunger, poverty, wars, revolutions, everything was out there. And we have such an amazing society now to enjoy that we all need to be a little more appreciative to really understand how far we've come as a society.
I am still waiting for the Jetsons car so that I can fly above traffic and zoot around. I'll keep waiting for that.
I was watching that movie, Back to the Future, with my children. How optimistic they were by 2015, where we're going to have flying cars and all these other inventions, but not yet.
Not yet, but that's okay. We have many other things we didn't see coming. Jose, I want to leave you with the final word, what you want our podcast listeners to take away from this episode, something to think about as they go forward. I want you to take us out of the episode.
Thank you so much for that last question. I think I've said so many different things that I will just leave it at continue to reinvent yourself, be positive, don't feel alone when things get tough. Something that I like to remind people is don't feel alone when the world's falling apart or your world is falling apart. Just know that it happens to all of us. At some point, snap out of it, reincorporate yourself. Mostly every day, we have something go bad or difficult or tough. Snap out of it, start again the next day, start fresh with a new attitude, keep going. And again, at my age, which I hope I look okay for my age by now, but I continue to reinvent my activities, my outlook on life, and I hope to continue to do that for many years. So hopefully everybody will try to do that, make their lives exciting and fun, new.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest, podcast listeners. There you have final words from Jose, and I look forward to seeing you back on the podcast next week.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic business coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. Please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Till next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.